What? I see that. Yeah. It's getting winter, hey? Yeah. You can feel it? Do you like winter? No? Do you like summer? Yeah. I know you do. I love you. I love you. Yeah. Hi guys, it's Lisa here from my channel, and just thought I'd go on about a little bit more for part 2. So obviously we had to cut it short. I got distracted, started losing track of what I was saying because all of a sudden I realized our nurse was here and the time and all that kind of things, as Hugo was taking over for Anna for a little bit for the hour. And so anyways, I thought I'd go on a bit more through my own struggles, through the process of everything that we have been through. There's been a lot. So of course, and we had to grieve our son, Caleb, in the beginning of our story and our situation of things. There was that grieving process, but at the same time, we have to really jump on board and be alert medically. So we didn't really have that whole time to stop and fully grieve. We just kind of zombied everybody in the house. So we became zombies is what we did. And what happened was, so actually I was talking with one of our nurses about this today, because we actually had a nurse today. I was going to vlog today, or document or whatnot, but I was just extremely tired. I was so tired. I've been running nonstop. We've been revamping the office, doing Anna's medical care, just trying to process everything that we're doing in our daily lives and stuff, and go through and just trying to put ourselves back together again. And I mean, as I say, trying, it's not an easy process when you literally get hit with one illness and then have 2 surgeries and radiation. And when I had radiation, I was quarantined for 7 days. So you're away from your family. You can't touch your family or be near anybody because of the radiation and due to the cancer and stuff. So that wasn't an easy process for my family, and we started recovering from that. And you got to imagine, like, every time we recovered from something, something hit us along the way again. So I recovered from that, and then all of a sudden we're doing good. The next summer comes along. I'm like, okay, guys, like, go jogging with you. We'll start getting back to running and getting back to walking and all this fitness and stuff. And then by August, I think this was June when we started, and by August, I was hit with a brain bleed. By the beginning of August, it was August 6th, I had my first warning that there was an aneurysm happening. They told me it was a migraine, sent me home. Then I think it was August 10th. So from August 6th to August 10th, 4 days later, I ended up having a full-out brain bleed right here on the side of my head. And it's called a rare brain bleed that people normally and typically die from. So here I have this cancer. Everybody's like, okay, the risks are if it spreads, then you got to start worrying about when it starts spreading and things like that. And you're like, okay. And then you go through all these things and you're just like, wow. But when Caleb, when we were going through the process of grieving, it was difficult on our family. Hugo ended up shutting down, becoming distant from both me and Anna, our oldest daughter. Dawson started walking around the house, my oldest son. He's walking around and he's pacing this place, and and I started realizing, I'm sitting there and I'm watching, actually, Anna was sleeping, and I'm watching Oprah. Out of all shows, I was watching that, and there was this episode where there was a family who lost 6 children in an accident with their grandparents or something, and I'm sitting on the couch thinking how I'm this big sack of potatoes, this root, just growing roots in my couch, and that's all I'm going to be now. Like, I don't know how to get out of this zombie phase of myself. So I'm watching this, and they're showing this family going through their home and showing the rooms, and I was like, wow, that's a lot to go through. 6 children to lose, 3 boys, 3 girls, I remember. And then they ended up deciding to have another child, and they ended up getting pregnant with 6 children. and they had 3 boys, 3 girls. And so they started their lives again. And I thought about what Hugo had said to me before. There was a photo, I don't know if I have it, probably not at the moment, where the 3 kids are together and there's this little baby doll shining a light on the baby doll. And he says, we have a complete family photo, Lisa. Look at it. Look, there's your old, like my oldest son and Anna and our son together in this photo. And in this photo, there's a light shining on this baby doll with purple. And purple is like my favorite color out of all the things because it's positive. So we did eventually, conceive another child, named her Hope. She's full of life, everything like that, right? Everything that you've been through. She's our 7th child together. There was no question there was any other name, that this is what it is after everything you've been through. But before that, it was, Hugo started doing these hand molds, and he started molding candles and everything in our home, which I can show you here in a moment. And it was nonstop. There was he kept molding in his hand to the point she started falling asleep while he would put her hand in the molding cast, and it's cold. So she ended up learning to just, okay, I'm falling asleep. Like she'd look at me, roll her eyes, here we go again, Mom. And boop, her hand would go in. Sometimes she'd just be like, okay, I'm going to sleep. And she would fall asleep. So she did. And he ended up casting a whole bunch of things like this, so SMA, Cure, and he ended up molding. I know there's dust. I got to clean it up. I try to keep it clean, but you can see that, all the detail. He started doing all of these and a whole bunch of them. Made so many that we ended up giving a whole bunch away because there was just so many that he made. And then he started getting on this rambunctious, I would say it wasn't rambunctious. I would say, and when you look back on it, it would probably be anxiety. He just lost his son on Father's Day, and he has this little baby girl whose life we've been fighting for education on and things like that, advocating for. And so then he just started going, I don't even know how to say it. He just started, his mind just went, and he felt he had to make a whole bunch of candles in our home. There's something attached. So he made a whole bunch, I don't know, it's hard to see, but a whole bunch of SMA angel candles. And I mean, he made a lot of these. We did a garage sale and everything, and was selling these at garage sales. He was giving them away to SMA families. He was, and the story behind all this, though, that's kind of unique or funny, is between the candle wax that he was using and between the dust from the molds when he was, polishing them and everything like that, my kitchen ended up looking like it was just full of white dust everywhere. Every time we were walking on the floors, every time he was making the candles, there were wooden floors, so we were sliding on these floors like nonstop for 2 months. This was going on. And I'm constantly trying to clean up all this white dust everywhere from the kitchen. I mean, it was all over our counters, all over our cupboards, kitchen table, all over the floor. I don't even know how we made our day through it with it. And, I was watching that Oprah show, and after I got up and saw that show and that episode where this family literally had another opportunity again in their life with another 6 children, very rare to happen, but it happened. And they pulled their lives back together. And I went into the kitchen after 2 months of this happening, after watching this episode. And I turned him around, and I grabbed him, and I turned him around. I'm like, Hugo, look, stop, look at this kitchen. Look at everything. I said, our son's walking around like a zombie. We're not even interacting with the kids anymore. We're just like zombies. Everybody's zombies. And our kitchen is a mess. And I said, look at it. And so he finally looked at me like I was crazy, and then started looking around the whole kitchen, and he went, wow, I made a mess. And then he's like, I got to clean this up. And he started cleaning up the kitchen. But we started somewhat all coming back together. But at the same time, we're not the same family. Both Hugo and my older son became a bit distant from Anna. A lot of things started to begin to happen. I eventually tried to pull my life back together, and uh, eventually I enrolled back to school. I felt confident. I was losing weight. I was happy. I had my mind like it was fully active. I felt like I could absorb everything. So I felt really back on life somewhere. Um, and I can't even explain it. Like it was absolutely a big process to go through. Like the day Caleb passed away, he we drove home. I needed to go home for a bit out of the hospital, everything. And all of a sudden our side of the yard is all full of these white daisies. And he goes like, Lisa, look, look. And I didn't want to lift my head. You're bawling, you're crying. And your whole body's collapsed inside. So finally, eventually I looked and I couldn't believe it. We just stopped and there's all these white daisies covering the whole side of the yard. And I thought, well, I bring that up today. I was going to bring the picture, Anna's nurse. I'll post it later. That Anna's nurse and her did yesterday, and it was blue, which is Anna's favorite color. Used to be purple, but she loves blues and greens and yellows now. And they painted all these white little daisy-like flowers in there. And I was like, wow, it was just like, you know, um, that connection. And then I told her about the story that, when Caleb passed away, it was difficult for me to go through. I, literally walked in the house and collapsed. Like I shattered till I crumpled to the floor, literally. And Hugo had to keep trying to pick me up, and I just kept falling through and just going to the floor. It was crazy. Eventually I'd start sitting outside because I couldn't sit in the house no more. I couldn't because, every so often you hear Caleb cry, you go get him, take care of him, and you have your kids. And it was silent. And I would keep looking down the hallway, like, where's my brother? Like, he's not crying. She would be waiting for that cry. It wouldn't happen. Eventually, when we were able to help her realize that he was gone, she started crying, and she cried for a couple weeks. Was really the only time I've ever seen Anna really depressed is when she found out, the realization he was gone. And then we went from all of that and trying to pull our family together. So then I started going back to school, and maybe it was too soon for myself. I don't know. I decided to go back to take paralegal, and I enrolled in school. It was a 15-month course, cramming course type of course. So I got through 6 months of it. And unfortunately, in all the events around the time that my son had passed away, there was another child who passed away in my older son's classroom from an asthma attack in front of the class. And his mom had, a miscarriage and things like that. And just everything happened to him all around the same time. And the whole process of death really hit him very hard. And he didn't know what to do. He was running out of the school. He was like literally climbing up a tree so people wouldn't go near him. He was really upset. It was hard on him. And so I eventually had to make some decisions. And this was after I'm getting lots of phone calls at my school to a point where they were going to kick me out, and my class advocated to have me stay in this class. So they finally decided from the advocation from everybody that I would stay in class. But then this happened, and then I started getting to a point where my hands were really getting stiff. I couldn't type, and I said something is really wrong. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's nerves. So I go to the doctors eventually, thinking this is stress and all that stuff, and it turns out that I need to have surgery on both my wrists. I have severe carpal tunnel, which is part of thyroid disease. When it progresses, you get joint pains and things like that. And there's a lot of people think, oh, it's a hormonal disease, that's it. There is nothing more to it, but it actually really takes a toll on your body, on your weight, your metabolism. When it started attacking my lymph nodes, I kept saying I hurt behind the ear, a lot of pressure, a lot of pain. I kept being told, nobody really did anything or anything. But then when they found it during the surgery, they removed it, but I could feel a release. There wasn't that pressure behind here anymore. I didn't have that pain, and I could hear a little bit better, but my hearing is still not the best. So I don't even know how to explain that. It was just the pressure, I think, did something to my hearing. I don't know. I don't know, but I don't know. I can hear, but I can't hear. So, it's really hard to explain, but it was weird. And I felt so much release after they had removed them. But I went into a depression. You go into this depression because all of a sudden this cancer that they told you did not spread has spread to your lymph node. And then I go in for radiation eventually, and my right breast swells up, and they have told me that the reason this happened is due to the fact that there's cancer cells, so it's attacking the cancer cells in there. I did have that evaluated and cleared for now, as they told me, so I cross fingers on that, as I have lost a childhood best friend. I had a few best friends in my life. I couldn't just say there were two really, really close best friends as females that I had in my life, but a lot of close friends. And the one I spent my childhood with, pretty much, she eventually passed away from that. So it was difficult to process all this and, keep thinking about her family and stuff. And it was crazy to process all of this for myself. And I fell into a depression. And then we did a full hysterectomy because I had tons of fibroids, which would be risks for my cancer and stuff. So we made the decision. Plus I had cysts that are very large and things to be removed. So we did that. And I had to recover from all of this. In these processes of time, Hugo was actually taking care of our children. Myself, he was running the whole household. In between his work, taking time off work for that, just really just to stay home for my treatments for a couple days or whatever, or 7 days or whatever the time was that we had to get through for the surgery. And then he'd be off to work again, and I would be, slowly maneuvering myself back into a process of our family and start taking care of the family again. But it was in that time we started hitting economy issues. He works oil and sand, so he got laid off at one job. Okay, and then when he started going to work in between, gets laid off of another job. Okay, and this was happening not just to us, but a lot of places, a lot of people. So then I think it was by the time we hit a fourth layoff, it was up to 6 months of a layoff, which kind of set us back. At the same time, we were still trying to keep afloat. So we used all our resources in time eventually, but we worked as best as we could as a team. And then we finally started getting up on our feet, started rebuilding, start getting on a good track. Everybody's positive. And boom, he gets a phone call, set on video chat. He has a crew of guys in the truck. He's at work and everybody is silent while I am screaming and I'm in pain, intense pain. I mean, it's going all over. It's from all over your cranium, all up in here, all in the back of your head. And this shoots from 0 to 60 seconds of pain, instant pain, 0 to 60 seconds. I had been chatting with someone on the phone. And as I was starting to chat with them, it started happening. And I was like, oh my God, I was about to say something. And my mind went absolutely blank. And all of a sudden something happened. And I don't know if I was trying to tell them it's happening or something. I don't know. And then Dawson, I was screaming for my son. And he started coming up. And everybody knew that, it was an ambulance right away. And did I get into the vehicle? I think I got into a vehicle this time because I didn't want to call an ambulance for something stupid again. So I never called the ambulance. I actually just got into the vehicle and we sat in the waiting room for 2 hours. And finally my mom started screaming, she's having a brain bleed, somebody help her. And they're like, okay, finally they got us in. And somebody told me, this nurse comes up to me and tells me to stop screaming and stop crying because it's only a migraine. And then I could hear her and another nurse outside in the hallway calling me a hypochondriac and I'm being a hypocrite and oh my God, she's overreacting. And they send me for CT scan. And I come out of the CT, I'm walking, I think at this point, I come around the corner and there are paramedics in a stretcher waiting. And they turn around, they're like, Lisa, yeah. And okay, we're transferring you to another hospital. So they were transferring me to another hospital due to the fact that they noticed I had a brain bleed and needed surgery in my brain. So I get to the hospital. I'm in the ambulance bay for a very long time, still not hooked up to any IVs or anything like that. And it was already a full day of really hot weather that I ran all day. Didn't drink any water all day, nothing. I didn't drink anything that entire day. I didn't eat anything that entire day. And I was running from one place to the next, picking up medical supplies, picking up things for the other kids, picking up things for myself. And I didn't stop. I had to run from one appointment to the next appointment to, go get what we need for, all of his medical equipment, and phone calls in between. And it didn't stop. I never stopped that day. I just kept going and kept running, and like my normal days, but usually I drink water in between. Anyway, so by the time Hugo hits Calgary airport, of course he's coming from Fort Mac to Calgary, they tell him that I'm going to be going in for surgery, and they have no idea what my outcome is going to be. And they left him like that at the Calgary airport. His flight got delayed for 5 hours. So he was sitting there by himself for 5 hours, not knowing my outcome. And then to be told, by the time he gets to the hospital, I'm just coming out of the ambulance bay and going into a trauma room or something like that. Not a trauma room, but a cubicle or some kind of bed area. And eventually I was admitted to ICU, neurology ICU. And then I was evaluated, things like that. Eventually they realized that they would start seeing whether the blood will absorb itself in my brain again, or, and monitoring whether I would need the surgery. So I never did go for the surgery, and Hugo was terrified. Like, he didn't know what my outcome would be after the surgery, what I would look like, all this stuff, right? Where we're going to have to function again. So thankfully, for some reason, I don't know, I call it the energy. I don't know, for myself, I truly believe it was probably prayers, because I was literally in a situation where they're like, you're going in for surgery. And it just started turning around very slowly. And then they told me that I'm supposed to die. Like, this was my exit. This was my exit here, guys. And that didn't, I don't know, I'm here for a reason. I don't understand it. I don't know why. And that's what I struggle with in my daily depressions and anxieties and PTSD. And, the whole world is awful in my mind. And it's not. Not everybody's awful. Not everything is awful. So it's a big mindset of things you have to change. And it's hard because when you've dealt with a big, huge milestone of things, 4 years after my son passed away, my father ended up becoming sick. He ended up staying with us for a while. He ended up needing surgery on his large intestine. They didn't think he would make it through that. So we all prepared ourselves. He was completely septic. Septic means it's like toxic shock to your body. Your body's literally being infected by itself, and you eventually go into shock and die. It's a very serious, critical situation at times. So he literally was going septic, and lost his large intestine through that situation, and ended up on an ostomy bag. We started, my youngest daughter was like, oh, I'm going to put the gloves on and come follow you. Never bothered her whatsoever. So I had this surgery on my hand, and I'm helping my dad with his ostomy bags, and trying to help everybody and care for everybody. And Hugo had to go to work, and it was eventually Christmas Day, and I think my daughter ended up in hospital. So we were going, not just before Christmas Day, I think she was finally admitted back home. And then before that, she had pneumonia and stuff, and Norwalk was hitting the wards, and all this stuff was happening. SARS, I think, I don't know if it was all during that time. I can't remember all that time lapse, but anyways, I remember there was something that hit the hospital. I think it was Norwalk. And my dad started getting sick on Christmas Day, my stepdad. And then Boxing Day, he was very not doing so good. So then one of our home care nurses happened to stay with us through this process, because she realized something's going on, and helping me monitor and seeing what I was telling her. And she come and she checked on him, and she's like, okay. So we monitored him all day. She stayed with our family. And eventually in the evening, my father, we called an ambulance, convinced him that he needs to go to the hospital. And so eventually he stood up. They told him, they told the fire department, we're good. You guys can go. And they convinced my dad to stand up and get into his walker. And when he stood up, you could just see his lights shut off. Everything shut off. And when they brought him to me, he was trying to say something, and then he was gone. And I was holding his head in my hands. So my children were there. My oldest son grabbed my younger daughter, left, and our home care nurse kind of hovered over our daughter. Everybody kind of hovered around her. And they, you know, I had to ask them to remove him from the home. They kept playing, checking the reflexes of his head. And the reflexes were gone, and you could clearly see they weren't there. And I asked them, can you please remove him, get him to the hospital, and, away from my children. Like, not, this isn't the situation. We need to get him into the ambulance and not play with his head. So eventually we went to hospital. They took him off life support, and, he went peacefully. So then life just kept going crazy. We ended up having to move because the landlord needed the house for his sons to be near college and things like that. And he did try to ask if his son could live with us, but it was so chaotic to have a medical child in our home. And for somebody to be studying with a medical child, it's very complex when you got nurses in your home and you've got RTs and everybody coming in and out of your home constantly. So we were trying to figure out what we're going to do, try to save some money and try to move, and then he can have his home. And but we ended up getting a notice that we had to move quickly within 3 months so that they could have the home and stuff. And we were like, oh gosh. So we had to cram, try to find a home that would be suitable. We have my mom now living with us and moving all her stuff in. And, so we're having an extra person coming into our home now and officially moving all their belongings, their whole life into our home, and trying to figure out how do we summonize that. Then we finally find a home. We did get it looked at. I had my brother-in-law did houses and things like that, and we just happened to miss it because he's not certified. We just happened to miss a pipe that was cracked under the basement floor that we never recognized. So the very, very first night we moved into our home, our kitchen flooded. I started the dishwasher and boom, it's flooding. We're like, where's all this coming from? Go downstairs under the concrete where they hid a whole bunch of stuff on it. And I kind of should have known better. I should have looked because I thought it was odd. There was so much stuff in that corner. And I felt a gut instinct about it, but I didn't. So this problem fell on us. It's over $5,000 of damage in the moment we moved into our home. Flooded our basement completely. We had to have it ripped and gutted and things tossed. It was, and have special fans and all this stuff going. And it was crazy. It was really devastating. And it just was like one event after another. It just kept going. And we had no help. We didn't have the insurance companies like, oh, well, it's really technically the other people, but you guys didn't have it certified. So really, we don't know what to do. It was just crazy. So we were like stuck with this situation. And these people didn't even disclose it. So, sometimes I wonder why their company's named the way it is. I won't mention it, but some part of me was like, really, I really want to mention it, but but the last part, like they literally, there's a reason why they're on the run. And it's devastating to know that you trusted these realtors, you trust this bank, you trust these people, and all of a sudden these things start happening. And it was one event after another event. And then, we move into the house and we get told, oh, all of a sudden we're like, finally get this phone call from the bank's insurance company. And they're like, oh, by the way, you qualify for this and this and this and this. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're on a medication, Hugo, for mental health. And he gets denied. So he gets denied this insurance. So he goes off this medication because they tell him if he's off for 5 years. And this medication's for anxieties. So he goes off of it. Well, it didn't last so good, and it wasn't so well, and it hasn't been going so well for that situation of things. So we started crumbling and falling and falling and falling, all in between this big spiral of the trauma of what we just went through of, oh my God, I almost had my exit just there, right? And then to all these situations. Now, I will eventually start going into a lot more about addictions and depressions and anxieties, because now we have my mom living with us, who is a gambler, addictive person. She loved her VLTs. Caused a lot of trauma on our family over it. And people think VLT addiction, well, they just blew all their money. Well, it can become to a point where it's like living with a heroin addict. They demand money, need money, will literally go to great lengths to cause fraud, to defraud people, and put your name through the ringer out of their own frustrations and angers or anything that it is a world of Chucky dolls. It's sad for the victim of the VLT machine. And I'm saying victim of our government VLT machines, because my mom was a good person before these VLT machines really took over. And she was somewhat of a good mom. I mean, there was times and issues that, yes, that people will completely disagree with. And I understand that too, because she did make her flaws. But coming into all of this, it is like living with a heroin addict. So we took her and her addiction on, did our best to try to get help for her. We did have some success at some points, and other points we didn't. And then all of a sudden, now she's vulnerable and she becomes a victim of online romance scam. This thing is real. It's insane. So now these online romance scams now have all my information. They have all this stuff, and it is real. It's real. It's scary for the family. It's scary for everybody, and it shouldn't be happening. They are victimizing Marines. They're victimizing the honorable officers that go out there, their uniforms, their presence, what they represented for many people in our countries. It's a disgrace, and it's one of the biggest crimes I've ever seen. It runs and ruins people's lives. Literally, it literally ruins their lives. And I will get into more depths about it all later on. Eventually, I'm going to come and introduce Hugo, as Hugo is starting Rageful Peace or Peaceful Rage, because we are two different people. So we can't really come on board with the whole idea. Like, he'll have his ideas, I have my ideas, and then we kind of just are not able to put them together just yet. So I decided, why don't we start your own channel, Hugo, and I'll start my own channel, and we can blend our ideas together when we're more comfortable and when we can, and work together when we can on our own channels. So he is my partner to the Peaceful Rage or Rageful Peace. So you can link on his description. I know I'm not the most entertaining person just yet. Well, not yet. It's not about entertainment really in one sense. In the other sense, it's about the education behind following someone who suffers a complex PTSD. And I mean, drama, yes, it's drama. There's drama. There's always drama in people's lives. I mean, you cannot live life without drama. There's drama everywhere you go. I mean, I go to Walmart and there's drama in the parking lot half the time, people screaming at each other. So, I mean, what the heck? It is what it is. It's just a world of drama. But at the same time, it's a world of gratitude. Things we take for granted, things that we don't educate ourselves about. And we're such a fast-paced world. It's all about technology. Oh, like, who's going to have the best TikTok? Who's going to have the best this? We're such a fast-paced technology world. We forgot to be more in touch with each other as people, as individuals. We've really lost that in-touch individuality about people, like individuality. Sorry. So we've really lost that in touch to people, the connections, the realism of what social life used to be. And now it's a world of universe, cyber, social life, I guess. I don't know, cyber social life now. I don't know how you guys would say it. Through COVID, I found more people began to really re-earth themselves to how things kind of used to be. So really starting to become in touch with themselves, really starting to learn what the grieving process of missing people is. And it was weird to go through that with the world, to be the world, sitting there going, sometimes I wish the world would understand what it's like for us as medical parents to, all of a sudden the big flu outbreak is happening in class and all these people are sending their snotty, sniffling kids to school because they got to make an income, but don't realize how quickly a pneumonia can turn on your child, or that stomach flus can develop and that you can get pneumatosis on a regular child or human being who is sick. And there are those things, and you start learning all these medical things and histories. It's kind of interesting, the whole medical science, when you start learning a lot more behind the whole world of medical science. I'm very intrigued by it because I worked in long-term care. It was kind of my direction I was heading into. And now I'm a medical mom who has been growing through my own past traumas as a child and to my adulthood. I can go through more stories as I go along. There is so much for both Hugo and I to cover on a variety of things that people can relate to or have been through. And I want people to know that they're not alone on a lot of these issues, that the world is not alone on how they felt after COVID or before COVID or through COVID. Just the whole mental health process is difficult through it. The loneliness, the isolation, the like, oh my God, I'm going to go crazy. So we are that family in a home because we don't know how to be accepted in the world sometimes. And sometimes we go out and all of a sudden Anna's vent's going off and what do you mean it's low battery? We just got out. Like, we haven't even used it for 5 hours. And we have to find a plug-in right away. And we go into these state of panic. So anyways, you know, I could tell you so many scenarios. Like, we have gone to Calgary and we used to have to go to treatments for NS treatments. We had to go for her spinal injections, which is Speranza. And we'd go to Calgary sometimes. And this one time we're going and all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, we really have to change Anna, right? And we're in a van and all of a sudden my back starts giving out because I have to crunch over and I'm trying to work with Anna and do everything I can. And all of a sudden he goes like, I'll come help you. My back locks and spasms and I'm stuck. And I'm trying to do everything. And then he comes into the back, he leaves the hatch open and all of a sudden we hear click. We look back and we're stuck in the van. And it's across, we can't get out the door that way. The ramp is covering this door and now we're locked into the back and Anna is blocking us from being able to get to the front. We're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So we settled Anna, we got everything that we needed to do done. And finally, carefully, Hugo crawled over top of Anna, latched open the door and carefully, as I guided to make sure he's not, going to hook onto this cord or that, or, oh, your foot's too close to her nose or anything like that. But he got out of there and we were able to keep going on for our travel, That's what it is. We just have these up and down moments in our life. And some are exciting, some are adventurous, some are really super boring because we're normal people. We're regular people with regular lives. Regular lives with a medical life. So our living room is a PICU setup in a sense. But Hugo had ex-firefighter EMS knowledge. I worked in long-term care. So our medical knowledge together really helps with Anna's care. I will lead into more, like I've said, thank you for the new subscribers. Thank you for the new followers, people who are watching. Subscribe below, hit the bells, whatever. Ring them all if you need to. I don't know what you need to do. But even if you just want to follow along and say, like, you know what, I just want to follow along, catch your vibe. That's fine too. Anyways, it is a process. It is our life. It can be messy. It could be clean. My vlogs aren't always going to be perfect. I am not perfect by far. I am literally doing this raw. So I want to say have a great night. And I'm glad I finally got this part 2 up a little bit. I know it's not big, eccentric, and like, oh, wow. But it is what it is. And I'm just starting out. I'm getting comfortable with the viewers. I'm getting comfortable with what topics I will be starting to address or come through or whatever, and days and events that we will be going through with Anna. So as a family, we will start vlogging more events as a family eventually as we get there through a bit more. So have a great night.
Don't mess up your sweaters, please. I don't feel like watching them.
Come, Deegan. Come say hi to your two boy. No? You don't want to say hi to your two boy? Hey? Daddy's not a big fan of baby. I guess doesn't want to change diapers.
Things are right, you just know. There is something in your eyes that brings me home. 'Cause when there's love, you don't let go. So as long as you're with me, you're not alone, you'll never be. I wanna tell you what I feel and really mean it. I wanna shout it from the rooftops to the sky. 'Cause if you ever need a friend, you know I'll be it. From tonight until we see the end of time, I'll cross my heart and hope to die with. Always and forever I'll be by your side. When days are dark and stars don't line with. Always and forever till the end of time. As long as you're with me, you're not alone, you'll never be. I wanna tell you what I feel and really mean it. I wanna shout it from the rooftop to the sky. 'Cause if you ever need